Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to get a basic character that can dash in any direction by simply pressing shift once, and if you keep on pressing it, make it sprint. I've seen a lot of tutorials that will show you how to sprint or how to have a directional dash, but all of those would usually involve using two different buttons to do this type of action. And frankly, I like to do it by using just one button. So today I'm going to show you how it's done. The actual blueprint themselves are not all that complicated. Even though it might seem that way, this is the mechanic for sprinting. This is how you dash and how you calculate every direction in which you go. And here is just a simple check to figure out if you want to dash or if you want to sprint. So that being said, let's get right on to it. God damn it, I need to learn how to speak in English. Well, too bad. Okay, so we just launched our Unreal Engine. Let's go for... Your window might look differently if you have an older version of Unreal. I'm using 4.24.1 if I recall, and in the last update they added this window. In order to continue, we just click on games, and if you're using an older version, as I said, your window should look something like this. Now we are going to go with the third-person blueprints setup because this already gives us the character and everything else set up from the beginning, so that we can focus solely on making the sprinting mechanic. So just make sure you're using blueprints, and let's name our project. So let's try sprint dash underscore test 1. I always, if I'm not working on a certain game, I always use this type of naming convention. I always have the name of a mechanic that I like to work on, and test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, or whatever, how many times we need. Okay, so now that we are in the third-person in the third-person scenario or setup, whatever, this is what we come up with. We already have a character. As I said, it moves around, it jumps. We already have the perfect setup. Now, the first thing we need to do in order to get our sprinting mechanic going is to go to settings, project settings, and set up an input. We need to set up a trigger for the blueprint to activate. So let's go to inputs, action mapping. Now we have jump and reset VR. We don't need a reset VR since I'm not doing a VR game. You might leave it, I don't know. Now let's name it sprint dash, and I'm just gonna put the left shift button. And that's about it. Now let's just go to our third-person BP blueprints and get our third-person character. as I said, I'm not gonna need a reset VR. I'm not gonna use the gamepad input since I don't have a gamepad. And I don't need a touch input since I'm not having a touch, since I'm not making it for mobile. Now, this is all we need in order to get started. Because this is the movement functionality, the camera input, and the jump. We don't need anything else. So let's just compile, save, and get started. Okay, so I'm just gonna split this into 3 parts. First off, I'm gonna show you how to make the directional dash. Then I'm gonna show you how to make the sprinting, and then how to put them all together in order to function from the same button. So for the directional dash, the first thing we're gonna need is our input. Sprint or dash. Then let's just go for a sequence. Now, a sequence allows you to do multiple things at the same time. And we're gonna need to do 4 checks at the same time in order to figure out which direction are we going into. Now, in order to do those checks, we're gonna have to set up a variable. And our variable will be taken from here. So just right click, promote to a variable, and let's call this one forward input. Now, just so that you understand, this input is actually giving us a -1 or a +1 value. If we're moving forward, it's giving us a +1. If we are moving backwards, it's giving us a -1. And what we need to know is whether or not this is a positive or a negative, so that we know which direction are we going on the forward axis. So let's do the same for the right axis. So right input, connect everything. Nice and easy. So let's do our first check. So for that we need a branch. And we need to check if forward is bigger than 0. Because if forward input is bigger than 0, that means we are moving forward. So if that's true, we'll need to launch character, and this node will apply a force to your character and launching into a specific direction. The problem is, right now we don't know which direction are we trying to go on. So for that, let's use this. Let's use the control rotation, and we'll need a forward vector. So might as well just copy everything from here. Let's put them somewhere around here. And now if we just plug this, which is the forward direction, nothing will really happen because it has no force behind it. It just knows like the direction. So in order to add a force, we want to multiply it by a float. And that float will be how much force you want to add into the input. So with how much force do you want to throw him away? So let's try something around, let's try 10,000 for now. So as you can see, now if you go left, right, back, it's not gonna work. But if you go forward, you can do it. But if you stay still, it's not gonna work. You need to actually be moving forward for this one to work. So let's just do the same thing for all the others. Which means we might as well just copy those. And put them nice and even. Perfect. Let's just move this backwards a bit. Now we need to continue our checks and check if this input is smaller than 0. Because if it's smaller, that means you're moving backwards. So what we want to do is get the exact same value that we have here, but in the other direction. So we want to invert it. So let's just take this one and put another times float and add a -1. Okay, we're back. So now all we need to do is do the same thing for the left and right. So first of all, let's just get our checks by putting the right input again. And I'm just using those ones so that I don't have to put them again. So right input bigger than 0, right input smaller than 0. If it's bigger than 0, then we'll need to get the right vector, multiply it by 1000 and plug it in. If it's smaller than 0, we'll get the same thing, but we'll also multiply it by -1. Now let's test that out. Compile, save. So if you go left, right, it should do the right thing. Now let's just clean this up and work on the sprinting mechanic next. Now that we have the dash ready, the next thing will be the sprinting mechanic. So let's just work on that next. But first, I'm gonna pause the video and I'll be back once I clean this up. Okay, we're back. So let's work on the sprinting mechanic. So let's eliminate this for now. I did that by pressing Alt and clicking on the line in order to remove it. So the sprinting mechanic is actually really simple. All you need is your character movement, and we need to set max. We need to set the max walk speed. That's all there is to it. You set the max walk speed to something that's bigger than the original. Now the max walk speed, it's, as it says here, it's 600. So when we sprint, we want to set that up to something bigger. So let's put something like 2000. And in order to stop, because right now when you press, you're gonna set the max walk speed to 2000, but you're never going to get it back to 600. So let's just set this one back to 600. Let's compile, save, and try it out. Okay, so now if you press, you're sprinting. If not, you're just walking. However, now you can no longer dash. So let's just comment this. So, no, actually, first of all, let's just focus now on how do you make it so you know when you want to dash or where you want to sprint. So let me just put this to the side for now, and I shall focus on it later. It's complete and we have the basic sprinting mechanic here. What we need to do is check whether or not we are pressing the shift button and holding it. Because if you are just pressing and release it, we want to dash. But if we are holding it, we want to sprint. Now, in order to do that, first of all, we need the player controller. We need to get the player controller. And to find out whether or not we're still pressing the key, there's a note input key time down. What this note will do is give us how long are we pressing that button. So in this case, the button will be left shift, and we'll need to have something that will always check whether or not we press it. So for that, we'll get an event tick. an event tick, and what this will do is do something every frame. So what it needs to do is to check whether or not this is bigger than, let's say, a few seconds. So we'll get a branch, and let's see if this is bigger than, let's say, 0.3 seconds. So if we are pressing the button left shift and we keep it pressed for more than 0.3 seconds, that means we wish to sprint. So we'll need to set the character value to the sprinting value, we need to set the max walk speed to the sprinting value, and also we want to set sprinting to true. Now obviously if you're no longer sprinting, we need to set it to false when the speed is 600. Now this is all we need for the sprinting mechanic and a bit of a check. So let's just put this, let's just comment this as sprint slash time down. I don't know if I spelled it right, but who cares. Now that that's done, what we need to do is check when we press shift whether or not we want to sprint or we want to dash. But for that, instead of using the pressed, let's make the check when you release the button, because otherwise you'll always be dashing. So let's get a branch and check if we are sprinting. If we are sprinting and you release the button, you want to stop sprinting by setting the value to 600 and stopping sprinting. Now, if you are not sprinting, that means you want to dash. So that should be it. Let's test it out. Walk around, you dash, and if you keep it pressed, you will have a small delay of 0.3 seconds before you start sprinting. But looks like it works perfectly. So that's it. This is how you set up a sprinting and dashing mechanic from the same button. I hope you enjoy this video and see you on the next one.